Before we can create a better system, we have to believe that another system is even possible. To do that, we need to look at what money does for us, what purpose it plays in our lives, what it does well and what it doesn't. This can be done by asking some fundamental questions about the role and purpose of money. First, what is the one essential purpose of money for which there is no substitute? Buying the things we need and want, right? Direct barter is so cumbersome, and money so versatile and convenient, that money in some form must be considered a necessity for any kind of complex economy. But, except on rare occasions, most of us don't need money to buy gold or silver or real estate, the usual things money systems have been based on. This leads to question 2. Why can't money be backed by all commodities instead of a single specific one? Wouldn't that completely change the nature of money and liberate it from the model where money's value derives from its scarcity? Question 3. Why can't the supply of money be created directly by the day-to-day need for money? If that were the case, the demand for goods and services would create the supply of money needed to purchase those goods and services. Question 4. You have to spend money to make money. Now that's a familiar saying that points to the other essential purpose of money, which is to fund future production. Question 4 then follows. Why should money be a claim on existing things at all? Why can't it be a claim on things yet to be produced? And finally, question 5. Can we set the bar higher and make money inherently stable and intrinsically moral? Is it possible to create a money system that balances and corrects itself automatically and distributes wealth more fairly? The answer to all of these questions is to eliminate money as a single uniform commodity. Instead, money should be a promise of or a voucher for a specific amount of any actual thing in demand, whether it exists already or will be produced in the near future. Money would then cease to be a thing in itself and instead be simply a unit of measurement for the value of real things, like minutes are for time, meters for length, and tons for weight. This idea of vouchers for real things goes all the way back to the invention of writing in numbers, and probably preceded the widespread use of coins. But until now, it was only practical for limited and local use. Our advanced technology, at long last, makes this concept practical for global trade. And there is a growing use of trade vouchers for real products already happening in business-to-business barter networks around the world. Once values can be reconciled by a common unit and transactions carried out using modern technology, there's no longer any need for money as a single uniform commodity. Most money is already just accounting, not a physical thing. Credits used as money could, and probably would, still include vouchers for gold, silver, and taxes. But they would also include vouchers for food, clothing, shelter, services, in fact anything in reliable demand. Money has no value if there's nothing to buy with it. This should be obvious. Therefore, the logical source of money should be the value of the real things we're going to buy with it. That value is ultimately determined by what the customers are willing to exchange for it. Therefore, value is created by demand, and money should be also. In the bank credit system, money is not actually lent. It's created by the borrower as credit towards demand for the borrower's future production, just as this movie is proposing. But the system pretends it's a loan of money, and repayment must be in money. The borrower, is required to earn both the principal plus the interest in money within a limited time. The alternative is to create credit money directly and simply spend it into existence in the process of production. Like bank credit, this is credit towards the demand for future production to be honored within a limited time. But the credits spent in this system are obligations to be fulfilled with products or services only. There is no debt of money. Full recycling is naturally enforced by the system itself. The money created to produce something must equal the money needed to buy it when it's ready for sale. If this seems novel and strange, that's because the words used in banking have conditioned us to believe that banks lend money. In truth, we self-issue credit now by signing the loan document and pledging our future productivity to repay the so-called loan. Our promise of repayment in money is what creates the money. And most of us will have to earn the money we repay by producing real goods and services of value to our fellow humans, just as if we had issued our credit directly. In our current system, the bank doesn't actually have the money it creates for us. The bank does, however, validate our self-issued credit by undertaking to lose the amount created if the loan is not repaid. This is called an unfunded liability, a fancy term for gambling money you don't have. Thus, our personal credit becomes both the bank's source of income as interest and also a potential loss to the bank. As the bank increases its income, it also increases its potential losses, which it knows it cannot cover. As banks are only required to own assets that cover 4 to 8% of their potential losses, losses more than that will put the bank out of business and require deposit insurance to bail out the failed bank's depositors. Like the banks themselves, the deposit insurance can only cover a small proportion of its potential losses, so the burden of saving the system eventually falls on the general taxpayer, the only one who can be compelled by law to take on the bank's gambling losses. The public as a whole must go into debt to create the new money needed to make up for the private liabilities that were unfunded in the first place. We can go on endlessly about the numbers and who did what, completely missing the point. The problem arises because we are enmeshed in imaginary numbers generated by an inhuman, unnatural, and ill-designed system which has become completely divorced from reality. All payments to the bank must be made in the form of bank credit or fiat cash, unforgiving numbers. So the first difference to note between our proposal of producer-issued credit money and bank credit is that where bank credit is payable only in money, self-issued credit is payable only in goods and services. In the first case, if the bank credit borrower fails to pay the bank principal plus interest in money, the bank takes whatever was pledged as collateral. Neither the bank nor the borrower has any means to ensure there is enough money in existence for everyone to pay back their bank credit. And neither party has any control over the value of the collateral either. The collateral may plummet in value and be insufficient to cover the bank's liabilities, causing a book loss and threatening the security of all the bank's depositors. When severe and widespread, this structural problem can bring the entire economy to a screeching halt in mass bankruptcy. By contrast with self-issued credit, it's impossible for the promisor to go bankrupt. Why? for the very simple reason that there's no debt of money to a bank. The debt that creates the money is payable in goods and services only. Therefore, a promise of product or service requires the ultimate creditor to purchase from or hire the one making the promise. Now, it would always be possible to be unpopular, unproductive, and unemployed. That would render an issuer unable to issue credit anymore. No one would accept it. So one could indeed go out of business. But with self-issued credit, going bankrupt and losing assets pledged as collateral could only happen if the issuer breached its credit contracts by failing to deliver the products or services promised. The supply of these the credit issuer should have control over. Poor business usually results in excess product, not a shortage. Therefore, a failure to deliver on promised production would have to be the result of some exceptional circumstances. It would not be the normal situation. There's a second difference between our proposed concept of producer-issued credit money and bank credit. The principle of money as a single uniform commodity could be applied to individual producers rather than to the money supply as a whole. This could be accomplished through an automated market. Why would this be a good idea? Didn't we just show the negative effects of money as a single uniform commodity? The answer is, when the scarce commodity principle is applied to individual credit issuers in a free credit market, the system becomes automatically self-correcting. The scarce commodity principle would force each individual credit issuer, from individuals to corporations to governments, to be responsible for spending exactly what they take in, a balanced budget, full recycling of the money. Their success at balancing their budget would determine the relative value of their credit in a free market where credits are exchanged. Perfect parity with a universal value unit could only be achieved by perfect balance of trade. How? By means of a public digital exchange based on some elementary school arithmetic. Take the total volume of offers to buy any credit issue and divide by the total volume of offers to sell. This is not a bargaining session between people to arrive at a price. The price is determined by the demand-supply ratio automatically. This producer-issued credit creates money as demand for actual production, and it automatically and relentlessly revalues the issued credit money in real time. This means that the total purchasing power created by the issuer always equals the real current demand for that issuer's purchasing power. Like a claim on gold, there's a specific value in real goods promised, and a specific promiser to collect it from. However, this form of money is not a single uniform commodity like gold. It is instead the promise of delivery of an unlimited quantity and variety of commodities actually in demand. The value of any given credit is simply what the issuer will give in real goods and services to get its voucher back. Logically, the most reliable credit money would be issued by those whose products are necessities. Producers of energy, food, minerals, raw materials of all kinds, manufactured goods, and construction would all be logical choices to issue credit. As well as these foundational issuers, in any given economy there would be third parties using the issuer's credit as money. The more issuers in a community and the healthier their credit, the more abundant the local money supply, and the more prosperous the people of that community would be. That money, being promises of specific products at set prices, would not be subject to revaluation due to the total amount of all credit in circulation. It would be directly affected only by its own internal balance of trade. The productivity of the people and the demand for their production would directly create the spending power available to them without interference from afar. There would never have to be an artificial shortage of money in a local town caused by the financial shenanigans of greedy people in distant cities or countries. The power of money would be localized and made self-responsible. In sufficiently productive economies with many successful issuers, there would be more than enough money available to service third-party transactions. In fact, the prices of goods and services in this third-party economy could rise due to a local abundance of spending power. As all prices would be in the same unit, local price rises due to abundant money in the third-party economy would be restrained at some point by easy comparison with prices elsewhere. Whether credits as a whole were scarce or abundant in any given community, any given credit would still only be redeemable for exactly what was promised by its issuer: specific goods and services at advertised prices. In this system, savings are simply savings, not loans to a bank. Like gold coins in a buried chest, saved credits would be out of circulation entirely. But unlike gold coins, these credits would also act like bonds. They would provide a yield, interest. Why? Because when someone accepts the issuer's credit as money in exchange for their goods and services, they have extended credit to the issuer. They've traded present value for future value. The credit then gets passed around as money amongst those who will accept it. Then, when the credit matures, which should be within a year, the final customer collects the interest in the form of a predefined return in extra product. In practice, this would take the form of a lower price. Anyone not purchasing with the issuer's own credit money would pay the full price. Buyers of large items, and everyone at the wholesale level, would always take the trouble to trade for the specific credits they needed in order to reap all the benefits available. If unredeemed, these credits must expire shortly after maturity, because credits are promises, and promises should not be held over the head of the issuer forever. It's spend 'em or lose 'em. So how can these expiring credits be saved? Quite simply, really. Maturing credits must be traded in for new ones. This would create an active exchange market, as credits would have to continually flow from those who were saving them to those who wanted to redeem them for the issuer's goods or services. They would have to be replaced in exchange by the newest possible credits that could be saved. This constant trading would accurately determine the real moment-to-moment value of individual credit issues. In addition, this trading would yield truthful and timely insights into the likely realities of future demand. To sum up, yes, there is a simple way to create an exchange system that inherently balances and corrects itself. Yes, this system favors a broad and more equitable distribution of purchasing power, as business success very clearly depends upon spending money so that potential customers can acquire it. And yes, purchasing power can represent all commodities, not just one. Purchasing power is a promise to deliver anything specific that's in demand, like electricity, steel, or carrots. This purchasing power is not money. It's measured in money, money being a unit of value, like minutes, meters, and tons. Purchasing power is created and constantly revalued by proven demand for future production. Where does the money come from for investment? All money in this system is an investment by its very nature. The acceptance of an issuer's credit in exchange for goods or services now is an investment in goods or services to be delivered in the future. Conceivably, there could be two types of product credit money. One type would be short-term, to be used in general circulation as money. This would fund current production. The second type of product credit could be longer-term and higher risk, traded separately to fund long-term development. Such long-term credit would be redeemable in product, normal credit, or equity shares. Shares in equity would continue to be the foundation of investment, and dividends to shareholders would be one of the costs of production. Dividend money would also need to be spent or exchanged before it expired, so that the flow of purchasing power to the issuer's customers would be maintained. So how does one earn a profit? The same way one earns a profit now, by selling production for more than it costs to produce it. However, in this proposed new system, the issuer of credit must maintain a perfect balance of trade for their credit to remain at par. Therefore, taking in more than was spent would just cause a shortage of their credit in the market. This shortage causes the value of that credit to rise relative to the prices which are expressed in the universal value unit. This sounds good, but it isn't. The issuer's credit is worth more than par when spent, seemingly a benefit to the issuer. However, if an issuer's credit is over par when redeemed for goods or services, it will cost the issuer even more in real goods and services to get it back. Why? Because everything is always priced in the universal unit. With over-par credit, the issuer's customers will spend less of that credit to buy the issuer's products than they would have at par. This leaves more of the issuer's credit in circulation, compensating for the shortage automatically. The result is that if the system has to self-correct, the issuer does not get the potential profit. Instead, it goes to the issuer's customers as an additional bonus. To make a profit, the issuer must spend new credit as required to keep its credit at par. Therefore, we can say that in this system, issuer profits could only be realized by spending them immediately. Perfect flow. Issuer profits can't be piled up as money in the bank seeking further gain. Profits must flow quickly back into the general economy, where customers can earn that purchasing power again. An employee bonus of immediately redeemable credit would be a fair, popular, and effective method of quickly sharing profits to avoid overvaluation. Charitable donations would be too, or hiring people to do socially useful, non-commercial work, such as environmental cleanup. People are always losing their jobs to machines. What can be done about that? This proposed system is based on 100% recycling of purchasing power. Gone is the overhanging debt at interest to banks. Gone are the loan payment schedules. Gone is any possibility of bankruptcy, because there's no bank to rupt. If the issuer wishes to sell X units, the issuer must spend enough credit into circulation for the customer to buy X units. If a machine replaces a person, it's very clear that issuers must still supply their customers with the purchasing power to buy their production. This is something Henry Ford realized long ago. He paid his workers 3 times the going wage. This enabled them to buy the cars they were building and thus expand the industry. But this essential principle of a successful economy has been forgotten in recent times. Cost-cutting for shareholder profit has savaged the purchasing power of wage-earning consumers. This has suppressed demand, bringing on even deeper cost-cutting, offshoring of jobs to cheap labor nations, expanding debts at all levels, defaults, bailouts, and all the distress we are witnessing. In contrast, this proposed system would require distribution of the full purchasing power to the customers, even if no human employees were required. How would mortgages work? Very differently. Builders would issue their own credit. They would not borrow money from a bank. Therefore, there would be no payment schedule and no interest clock to beat in order for the builder to make a profit. Timely delivery of desirable product would be the only commitment the builder would have to meet. Buyers wouldn't borrow from a bank either. Instead, buyers would enter into a partnership agreement with the builder and buy out the builder's share over time. As long as the payments were kept up, the builder would be a silent partner. Subsequent buyers would do likewise. Everyone would be free to negotiate their own pay-as-we-go arrangements, free of any conditions imposed by a bank. Bank-like services could still exist to facilitate these processes, but the pretense of lending money would end. In this mortgage partnership system, no one would lose their equity in any partnership until what they paid in is paid back out to them. Forfeiting collateral would be a thing of the past. In addition, payments in this system would have what economists call a counter-cyclical effect. Here's how it would work. In a growth cycle with a boom in housing, the issuer could gradually increase its credit issue to pay more people to build more houses because it would have a gradually increasing revenue stream from new sales. On a downturn, the builder must reduce production to meet reduced demand. This means a reduction in new credit issue. But incoming long-term payments remain the same, creating an imbalance that will eventually overvalue the issuer-builder's credit. Therefore, the issuer-builder must still spend as much as it takes in to maintain its credit at par. To accomplish this, the issuer could pay laid-off workers, reduce buyer payments if requested, invest in a new job-creating industry, give to charities, or spend it all foolishly. The point is that by whatever means, the same amount of credit must be spent as is coming in. This amount would only very slowly taper off as some of the payments finished. This would make long-term debts like mortgages natural bridges over economic downturns. This would be the opposite to what happens in the current system. In the current bank credit system, the principal is removed from circulation once it's paid to the bank. This money requires a new loan to replace it. If no one's willing to take this loan, the money supply is reduced. If every dollar has been lent multiple times, as in our current situation, the lack of $1 in new loans results in an unavoidable shortage of principal with which to pay off multiple loans. In contrast, the self-issued credit must be immediately returned to circulation, interest-free, as spending. A decline in the real estate market would still mean fewer jobs building houses, but the possibility of widespread foreclosures and homeless people camping outside of their vandalized homes would be gone. To the house buyer and citizen, the proposed new system offers the following benefits. No one is doomed by the calendar and by the dictates of a bank formula. No one ever loses their equity in any property they've paid for. And no one needs to fear that widespread defaults will result in a deflationary death spiral or ridiculous bailouts, because in this new self-issued credit system, long-term mortgage payments will provide a natural bridge over economic downturns. Where do banks fit in, or do they? The answer depends on how the system would be implemented. Technology now allows us to bank online. It's only one step further, technologically, to make the safekeeping, accounting, and money transfer functions of banking obsolete. Money could be securely stored and transferred online from peer to peer, directly and anonymously, without any third-party involvement, like banks or PayPal. Alternately, banks could function as fee-charging service providers and record keepers for the same self-issued credit system applied as an accounting system. And one method does not have to exclude the other. Both could exist side by side. Banks could also continue to function as lenders. But how could banks be lenders if they could no longer create money? And if no one even needed to deposit money, what would banks lend? And why would anyone need loans if they could issue their own credit themselves? Well, for this simple reason. In the self-issued credit system, the vast majority of people and small businesses would not be issuers. Why not? Because personal credit would never be widely acceptable, and most individuals and small businesses would not want the responsibility of being an issuer. Issuers must ultimately back their credit with their assets. Should they breach their contract by failing to deliver the goods or services promised, they could be forced into liquidation to satisfy their creditors. In a large corporation, the equity investors would likely put up more funding to ensure production, as this would be the only way to save their investment. But for individuals without such resources, it could mean selling their homes because they fell ill or misjudged costs or any number of other reasons, not a position most people would want to be in. So while one main goal of this system is to develop a society that would operate from savings rather than debt, there would still be a demand for consumer loans and business loans among non-issuers. Loans of existing credit already in circulation could continue to be made on the personal or institutional level, but new credit could only be created by issuers as promises of real products and services. Issuers could lend directly to trusted borrowers, such as employees. Issuers could also supply their credit for banks to lend at interest. These loans of product credit would be repaid with product credit. This product credit would not be redeemed for the issuer's goods and services, but its value would be the same as the credit that was redeemed. This credit would come with an interest charge, just as loans do today. But unlike conventional interest, flow would always be complete, because both the bank and the issuer would be compelled to spend all of this interest profit immediately in order to maintain the value of their credit at par. If borrowers defaulted on their payments, this would leave more credit in circulation than was needed to buy the issuer's output. Therefore, the issuer's product credit would be devalued proportionately. This would cause the loan losses to fall directly upon the issuer and also on all the holders of the issuer's now devalued credit. With the viability of their core industry at stake, issuers would surely cut off the bank's supply of product credit at the first sign of lax lending standards. In this way, banks would be dependent for money on the producers of real wealth, not the other way around. And the money that banks would lend would be real, which is to say redeemable for specific goods and services from specific providers. As for bankers, their essential and beneficial role in this new system would be in moving credit from those who have it to those who want it. Because credits in this system, like bonds, would mature at maximum value, there would be an optimum time to redeem them for goods and services. In other words, a period of maximum yield, like fruit at the peak of ripeness. And like fruit and other perishable goods, credits in this system also expire. Fruit must be eaten or it spoils. Product vouchers must be redeemed for product or become worthless. So to use this expiry date money as savings would require constant renewal. Ripe credit would have to be repeatedly exchanged for unripe credit. The longest lasting credit would be the newest, and so there would be a constant demand from savers for reliable issuer credit that would keep its redemption value. The most desirable credit would be from an issuer who maintains stable prices as well as consistent parity of credit. Anyone could do this credit trading from their own computer in a matter of minutes. However, there would be a market for professional researchers and brokers who could deliver reliable credit to their individual and corporate clients. And this is where the financial types could do well by doing good. Brokers would be performing three extremely valuable services to society. 1. They would safeguard the value of people's savings. 2. They would help everyone get the maximum redemption value for the credit they've extended. And 3. They would make sure that the issuers got all their credit back. For the system to work for everyone, broker evaluations must be honest. But this would tend to happen naturally, because brokers who sold bad credit would lose their clients. However, it would also be important to insist and establish by law 2 restrictions. 1, that brokers always be paid by the receivers of credit, not the sellers. And 2, the broker's fees should always be paid in the same mix of credit acquired for the broker's clients. With these restrictions in place, when brokers move credit from those who have it to those who want it, they would, of necessity, provide honest credit ratings to their clients. There would be no advantage in being dishonest. Suppose you saved up $100 million. Feel pretty secure? But what if there was almost nothing to buy with it? Now, what would it be worth? What if everyone else had just borrowed $100 million new dollars into existence, and the money supply had become swollen beyond recognition, like now? It's also important to remember that in a debt money system, all money saved, such as insurance or pension funds, is still someone's debt. The original borrower needs to be able to earn this money in order to pay off the original debt. So if you invest your savings with an expectation of gain, while the original borrower of the money needs to earn it and extinguish it, there's only one way this can be resolved to everyone's satisfaction. Both the bank and the borrower can be satisfied if the money invested for gain is ultimately used to employ the borrower, who's then able to pay it back to the bank and retire the debt. As well, you, the investor, can be satisfied if the borrower's labor produces an increase in the money value of your investment. But the real money value in equity can only be created by real economic growth, and this can't happen in a sustainable economy where stability is the goal. In a sustainable economy, as in nature, new growth simply replaces that which dies off. Thus, over the system as a whole, the net value of total investments could never increase because of equity growth. pension funds and insurance would have to rely on dividends and current premiums. But even more fundamentally, we need to understand that we can't eat money. The simple truth is that in almost every case, current needs must be met from current production. Our future cannot be ensured with saved-up money. We can really only ensure that supplies of real goods and services will still be there for us in the future by protecting our environment, by preserving topsoil, protecting species biodiversity, and by stopping war and the poisoning of the planet. The list goes on and on. What about taxes? If we could all exchange money anonymously, how would the government collect taxes? Wouldn't it be impossible? Everyone is sick of taxes, not so much the principle of paying them usually, but the complexity and the nuisance of collection and the corrupt and misguided purposes for which the taxes are spent. Most aggravating is the injustice that most of our taxes just pays perpetual interest to bankers on an ever-expanding government debt. In a self-issued credit system, government, like private issuers, would have to maintain its credit at par by operating within a balanced budget. To do that, it would have to collect taxes that equal what it spends. But the problem for government is that existing forms of tax would be very easy to avoid. Imposing such taxes would therefore be difficult and expensive. It would also be unfair, because those who complied would be paying for the many who were not. So what would be the source of taxes? The logical answer would be from things that can't escape to an offshore tax haven, from the private use of that which naturally belongs to us all, usually referred to as the commons. The commons means anything that is naturally given to all by the Creator. Bare land, natural resources, water, air, and the electromagnetic spectrum are primary examples. Taxing the commons applies tax at the base of the production process. This way, taxes are included in the price of all goods and services that consume or use the natural commons. Those who privately consumed or used the natural commons the most would pay the most towards the common expense of government. But the commons is not inexhaustible. The world and its resources are finite. As this understanding dawns on the world, we propose to put governments in a new position, one that requires leadership not from bankers and lawyers, but from eco-scientists and experts in sustainable culture. This is because governments, stripped of other sources of revenue, would be forced to rely heavily on the sustainable husbandry of all natural resources and commons within their jurisdiction. Most government revenues would come from resource royalties and user fees. In addition, a general sales tax could be enforced through mainstream retail businesses. And where there are socially and environmentally unwelcome activities, governments could also target them with punitive taxes. The result of this new approach to taxation would be much higher prices on resource-intensive items, especially non-renewable ones. But it would also result in the elimination of most existing forms of taxation. So what are the potential downfalls in this self-issued credit system, assuming it was fully established. For one thing, in a free and global trading system backed by private production, any issuer's money would only be as good as the demand for their product. As well, people might try to buy something and discover that the credit they want to spend is not acceptable to the seller. The seller can refuse acceptance for any reason, financial, political, or personal. This would certainly be a nuisance to the buyer and could easily cost the seller the sale, even many sales. So most sellers would not boycott any issuer's credit without a good reason. Because private credit would not be backed up by legal tender laws, the choices would be: 1. The buyer trades for credit acceptable to the seller, or 2. The seller decides to accept the credit the buyer offers. This is what happens now when making a foreign purchase. Another feature of this proposed system is that the amount of credit people have in their possession would be constantly changing by small amounts, as credit valuations change with the market. This would be disconcerting at first, but as all credit issues self-correct automatically, ups should balance downs over time. In the current system, if you have accounts in several different national currencies, you know that the total calculated in any one of them changes constantly. The difference is that with national currencies, variations in the trade value of the national currency affect everyone in the nation. With self-issued credit, the value of the credit in anyone's possession would depend only on the balance of trade of the producer that issued it, not the nation's central bank or politicians. If a government overspends, it would only devalue the government's own credit, not everybody else's. A crisis in customer confidence could destroy an issuer's self-issued currency. But that's also no different than today, trying to get credit from the bank. Purposeful attempts to destroy an issuer's credit would backfire on the aggressor because of the self-balancing feature. In every scenario we've examined, attempted attacks on an issuer via currency aggression would be just as damaging to the aggressor as to the victim. But destruction from the inside would always be possible. If the issuer's employees feared that their employer's credit might devalue, they might all try to trade away their paycheck credits en masse. This would cause the devaluation they feared and accelerate the sell-off. The public might join in. This would have the potential to trash the issuer's credit entirely and thereby destroy its ability to carry on business. However, there is a plus side to this scenario. All that devalued credit would still be guaranteed by the issuer. That's because, by the rules of this proposed system, issuers would always have to redeem their own credit at par, no matter what the market value. This brings us to another self-correcting feature of this system. Here's how it would work. Those who might be considering buying the issuer's products would have the opportunity to obtain more of the issuer's devalued credits than they would pay in higher valued credits. Because the issuer must redeem its own devalued credit at par, this makes the issuer's products more of a bargain, and thus more likely to sell. Increased sales would tend to bring the value of the issuer's credit back up. Another self-correcting mechanism would arise from currency speculators. They'd ask themselves, will demand for the issuer's goods or services actually be destroyed? Will production fail to meet the demand that survives? If demand did survive and production met it, buying would replace selling as the maturity dates approached. This would bring the value of the devalued credits gradually back to par. Those who invested in them would enjoy an increase in purchasing power. In our current system, Speculation in national currencies is a deliberately destabilizing and parasitic practice that can indiscriminately rob all citizens in the target nation of their savings. In this proposed new system, currency speculation would help stabilize and restore the value of troubled issuer credit. It would allow those with doubts to voluntarily unload unwanted risk onto those willing to take it. It would also provide opportunities for risk-takers to enrich themselves by good judgment as to which credits would survive and return to par. By making the choice to buy devalued credits, currency speculators would be rescuing the issuers they believe in, potentially a valuable service to both the issuers and to society. A common question about this proposal concerns technological capability. Can our technology handle all the necessary data and calculations quickly enough to be practical? No one wants to wait even 1 minute in a grocery store checkout line as the computer looks up the relative value of many individual credit issues before it calculates the payment. The answer to this is that in the year 2000, there were many informed people who publicly doubted that the Internet would ever be fast enough to carry video of a quality worth watching. 10 years later, the Internet is absolutely overrun with free streaming video and high definition available on wireless handheld devices. When it comes to computers and speed, many cautious assumptions have already been proved ridiculously wrong. In fact, accounting technologies that could implement this proposed system have been in operation for decades. In addition, a person-to-person digital coin has now made the leap from the drawing board to real use. Security and speed are priorities for everyone in the digital world. Where there's a will, there's a way. And the ways already exist. If our political will were to fundamentally overhaul the world's money system, it seems realistic to assume that the technical solutions would be forthcoming. We've saved the toughest question for last. How is the value unit defined if value is always subjective and variable? The real answer is one can never know what the full value of any trade might have been for those involved. Every act has many potential values in our lives: financial, personal, karmic, historic, or whatever. For purely commercial purposes, the money value of something is simply the number of money units agreed upon when it's sold. If it's resold tomorrow for more or less, its value has changed, even though the thing has not. And it could change back just as easily. We have widely agreed upon money units now. They're called national currencies. They're no longer promises of anything specific, and their relative values are defined by speculators out to profit themselves at everyone else's expense. Nonetheless, national currency units are abstract measures of value that have established a common understanding by being the units in which we price real things. They are, in fact, the only functioning units of value we have. It's been several generations since the masses of people habitually measure the prices of their daily needs in gold or silver equivalents. Quite the contrary, we value gold and silver and everything else in national currencies. So it makes sense to derive any new currency unit from these existing currency units. Now, it's mathematically simple to translate the often wild fluctuations of one currency against another into a smooth curve down the middle. Speculators love the fluctuations because they provide opportunities for quick and unearned profits. On the other hand, productive business does best with a smooth and predictable trajectory. A little bit of simple math can make a smooth curve out of several jagged ones. This smooth curve creates a new harmonized global currency unit, in the same way that removing the noise from a scratchy audio signal produces a clear tone. As the debt money system tears itself apart in wild gyrations, this new global money unit could come into existence by arbitrary definition as the stable midpoint at the center. So, to conclude, the proposed unit of value is to be a purely abstract notion of value, which in truth would always be unique to each individual, as value always is. Initially, this new unit of value would be defined by a simple formula, giving it a value in relation to today's national currencies. It would not, however, be tied to any of them. Once established, the new unit would cease to define itself by existing currencies. Instead, its value would be defined by the prices issuers charged for their goods and services. Ties to the bank credit for national currency system would be left behind, and the new global self-issued credit system set free.